mock exercise, we're going to take a look at the same case, Phoenix Partners, but this time we're going to focus on this other method called the reciprocal method. If you looked at the previous video, you'll see that we did the direct method and step-down method for this same question. But this question, so this was the question that we just did in the previous video. And this would have been the previous exercise that we just did. So it's important for you to review that video before you review this video. So let's go back to the case facts again, just in case it's been a while since we saw the question. So you've got a company called Phoenix Partner. They provide management consulting services to both government and corporate. These are two operating divisions. And Phoenix has two support divisions, the AS, the Administrative Services Department, and the IS, the Info Services Department. And these are the budgeted overhead costs for each of those support and operating department. Now, we did, in the previous video, we went through the allocation between direct and step down. And what we're going to focus on is we're going to actually take a look at this part. It says allocate the two support departments using a reciprocal method, and that's what we're going to do. And part 2 says let's take a look at the previous video, the results from that, plus the reciprocal method, and let's figure out which one makes sense. So let's take a look at. So under the reciprocal method, we need to actually provide an equation. So we want to know that the total AS, so I'm going to show the facts here. I'll do it this way. Okay, so what we need to do is we need to be able to express the cost of the Administrative Services Department based on an equation. And the equation goes like this. The total cost, a fully loaded cost of the Administrative Services Department equals $600,000, which is the cost alone, a standalone cost of the AS department, plus they're going to get a charge from the IS, and they're going to get 10% of the IS department. Okay? Now, the IS department, we're going to express that, the fully loaded cost of the IS department in an equation. The IS department's individual cost, standalone cost, is $2.4 million, plus they're getting a charge of 25% of AS. So what we're going to do is we're going to take this equation and we're going to plug this into here to solve for IS. And that's what we're going to do next. So IS equals 2.4 million plus 25% of 600,000 plus 10% of IS. Okay, so it's going to be 2.4 million. 25% of 600 is 150. And 25% of 10% is 0.025 IS, or 2.5%. Now solve for IS. That will give us equals 2,615,385. So if just solve for the IS, that's what we get. So let me write down the word reciprocal method here. Just to be clear on what method we're using. Okay, so now we're going to calculate, because we know the IS, we're going to go back to this equation and plug it in, plug IS in there to come up with the administrative services fully loaded costs. So AS is 600 plus 10% of IS, and we know that IS is 2,615,385. That gives us 861,538. Okay, so now we're going to allocate. Okay, so let me do it down here. So again, I like the chart to show you the support department and the operating department. And you've got your total cost. You've got 600,000. Now let's allocate the AS first. We know that the AS is 861. It doesn't matter which one we go with. That's 861. And we're going to allocate this as 3 department based on 25, 40%, and 35. So 25, 40, and 35. So that is 215, 385, 344, 615, and 301, 538. Now let's allocate IS. And again, IS, we know it's 10%, 30, and 60. 10% to AS. So 10%, 30%, and 60%. So 10% of, and by the way, this amount we're going to allocate is 2,615,385, right? The amount that we calculated. And 10% of this is 261,538. And miraculously, this is 0. Because that's what the reciprocal method is. It allows us to incorporate that the 2 support department, we need to allocate costs to each of the support department. That each of the support work is supplied to. So that one is 0, and then we're going to allocate the rest of 30% and 60% here. The sum of this is 1,129,231, and this one is 1,870,769. Okay, so let's answer the second part. The second part asks us to compare not only the first 3 methods that we did, but let's actually compare including the reciprocal method. So let's take a look. So government and corporate. So remember when we did the direct method, the values that we got was 1,120,000. Now we did 2 step down. The first step down we did was the AS allocation first. And we got 1,000,000 The second step down that we did was the IS first. And then the last one we did was the reciprocal method. And you could see they're not that much different, isn't it? If you look at all of the allocation, the 4 different methods that I'm showing you here are essentially the 4 different ways to allocate support costs across support department. Now we know that the reciprocal method takes into account the fact that the services provided to each of the support group, okay, was taken into account when we actually did the allocation. So we were respectful of the interaction between the 2 support groups. And given the fact that when we incorporate that, this is by far the most accurate. This is by far the most accurate method. And if you look at it, and again, it's, if you were to compare it, which one of these methods, which one is of the 3 is the closest? It's a direct method, which is interesting because the direct method is actually the one that is the least accurate. So in fact, the direct method ignores the fact that the support department provides interactions, and therefore there's associated costs with those support work within the support department. But this one, to me, is the closest to the reciprocal method. Okay, thank you.